Hey guys, welcome back to the CRX project. Appreciate you joining me. I left off in the last episode having gotten this transmission actually bolted in, got the clutch and flywheel installed. Today's episode I'm going to start digging into this a little bit further. The goal here is to try to get this thing on the road as soon as possible. So there's several things in here that I've noticed that I'll show you here in just a minute. I'm going to have to swap out and button up before we can actually get to a startup. So there's several vital things that we've got to take care of. But before I jump into this, I'm going to show you some parts that I just recently acquired for this project, and I think it's really going to help streamline some of these repairs and make it easier to get this thing looking better cosmetically. So let's take a look. Alright, so what I ended up getting were two front fenders here. I've got two doors, complete 88 doors. I've got a non-rusted OEM sunroof panel. It's the metal sunroof panel. This thing is almost brand new. There's a couple small little dings in the middle of it here, but those are easily fixed. It's definitely going to be more repairable than the rust that's on the panel that's on the car now. And the last thing that I've got, I seem to be collecting these, are the center garnishes here. So I ended up getting this center garnish off of the same car that the doors and the fenders came off of, but I ended up restoring that one. I used one of my CRX decals. I gave the thing a good buff, sanded it down, buffed it out, put the decal on there, and it looks really nice. So I've got choices here on which one I actually want to use on the finished product. Whatever I don't use, I'll either hang on to for future projects or end up selling them. This one here is actually a European center garnish. It's got the fog light in it here, but I did receive it with a small chip here in the corner of it. So I don't know exactly how I'm going to repair that yet. I was thinking about possibly trying to take a lens off of a good center garnish and actually swapping it over, but I've seen a lot of people complain about that plastic gets so brittle that whenever they go to peel it off, it actually cracks. So I don't know if I want to take that risk yet. So I'm really just going to hang on to that and see if I run across a center garnish that I feel like I can take apart. But that's about all I've got for the body panels. These doors are really going to help out because the doors that are on the car are full of Bondo here. You can see that the Bondo is like a thick layer, and there's actually some rust around the door handle here. And instead of me trying to strip this down to the bare metal, and no telling what's underneath here, I don't know if it's going to be super rusty or what, I'm going to pull these doors off, and I'm actually going to swap in the good doors here. They have been painted with some awful like satin black. For some reason, this flat or satin black is like a magnet for these CRXs. People, they don't want to paint the cars, they just want to spray like a layer of black paint on it. I guess they used to be like really cheap, junky cars. Just spray a coat of paint on it to make it one color, but it really makes the car look pretty terrible. So that's something we're going to take care of down the line. But having these doors that aren't rusted up are going to really help out as far as the bodywork's concerned on the car. So the fender, it actually came with those the quick disconnect bumpers. So they do have holes in them. I'm going to have to fill those holes in. It shouldn't be a big deal because the fender itself is really straight. There's no body filler on the fenders. I know the driver's side fender on the car itself, there's just a couple little dents and dings in it. I may end up using this fender on the driver's side because it doesn't have that quick disconnect hole there. But the passenger side fender is full of Bondo and it's really wavy, the entire thing. So this one's definitely going to be swapped out. So I've got a few more parts here that I got in from Rock Auto. Before I jump into this, and I'm going to show you what I've got because it has to do with what we're going to be doing today. here, it's obvious what I've got. I've got an air filter for the stock air box. This here is actually a valve cover gasket set. I noticed on the one that's on the car, the spark plug tubes are leaking pretty bad. So this is going to replace those as well as the gasket around the main valve cover. This is a thermostat gasket, oil filter, spark plugs, a new fuel filter because I don't know what all is in the one on the car, and that should be about it. We won't get to all this today because I'm probably not going to put the air box on there. I may not do the valve cover gasket just yet, but I do plan on trying to do an oil change, getting this new thermostat put in, the fuel filter swapped out, and go ahead and throw those spark plugs on. As part of the spark plugs, I'm going to put the distributor back on the car here. So this is the distributor I pulled off the car. The O-ring on here is actually in really nice shape. It's round and soft, so that was probably replaced just recently. So let's go ahead and move over to the car and get started on it. Alright, first thing I'm going to do is throw these bolts in for the rear engine mount on the actual transmission itself. While looking over some of these hoses, since everything's in pretty rough shape, I noticed this one here on the bottom has got a big crack in it. So this is a coolant line that runs through the throttle body. So I'm going to need to swap this little coolant hose out. So I'm going to pull it off, and I'm going to have to run to the store and pick up another one. Alright, this is the hose that I pulled off the car that has a rupture in it. This is the one that I have off of a spare A6 engine that I've got. It will work. It's the same size, diameter, so I'm going to cut it down to the length, and then we'll just use this one for right now. As you can see, this hose here is pretty close to being ruptured. If it gets hot, that could end up leaking coolant. So to avoid that issue, I'm going to go ahead and pull this hose off, and I've got another one that's in better shape. I'm going to throw it on there. Since the thermostat housing is in plain sight without the distributor and everything in the way, I'm going to go ahead and open it up and try to get that thermostat swapped out. You want to make sure you don't forget this thermostat ground. This is the ground for a lot of the main sensors on the engine itself. Alright, next up is going to be this fuel filter. Now be aware there are crush washers on here. These need to be replaced. to get this off, there is a 10mm bolt holding on this clamp right here. I've got the new fuel filter mounted up, got the clamp bolts in, and I've got the supply line attached already with the new crush washers, and I just got to put the return line back on with the new crush washers as well. Alright, I was going to go put the distributor on the car, but I did notice that this harness here, this wire is broken out of the actual plug that goes in the distributor. And there's also another plug, the coolant temperature sensor plug. It's actually got a broken wire as well. These have been moved around too much and they're very brittle. So I'm going to have to order a new plug. I may not need to order a new plug on this one. I may have to order a new plug on this one because I don't know if I can get this one apart. I think I can actually get this wire pulled out and get it re-terminated, but I may have to extend the wiring because it is pretty tight and it may end up being too short. So let me see if I can get this taken out, and we'll just go from there. Alright, until I can get some new wire, because I'm going to have to extend this wiring. It's not going to be long enough as is. I'm going to have to extend both of these, as well as the coolant temperature sensor wiring. I don't think it's going to reach once I re-terminate these. So I'm going to move on from this. I'm not going to put the distributor on, and I'm going to move to the spark plugs. Yep. Those O-rings were definitely leaking. Leaking terribly. With as bad as those O-rings are, I'm going to go ahead and pull this valve cover and get these gaskets changed out. I don't want to put those spark plugs down in there and have oil sit back on top of them. Instead of using this one that's really oily and dirty and has a lot of grime in it, I'm going to go ahead and just put on one that I've already stripped down. I was going to repaint this. I haven't got a chance to do it yet, but it will be good enough to get the new gasket on to drive it. So I'm going to use this one, that way I don't have to deal with this nasty one. Now before we put this on, you want to clean up this surface here, and you want to put some of this Honda Bond gasket maker in the corners here. thing to do is to throw in the new spark plugs. Okay, we made some slow progress today. I got a few maintenance items knocked off the list. Some of these things are pretty boring to watch, but they're completely necessary to get this thing back on the road. With the spark plugs and the valve cover gasket on there, we should be good on the oil leak up here. I cannot put the distributor on until I get this wiring situated. I'm going to have to order some wiring. I don't have the right size. So I'm going to have to extend some wiring over here, put some new connectors on there. That way we can get everything plugged in, get the distributor put on, spark plug wires put in, and then from there we can start adding fluids like the oil, the coolant system, and then a battery. And then I will probably try first startup from there. And then I will work my way around the car looking at the suspension to make sure that's okay to make it roadworthy. So that's all I'm going to do in today's video. So stick around and catch me in the next episode, and hopefully we can make some more progress and get this thing started.